That's Bernie. 1987, Bernard McGurk. There he was, him and Beningo. They just smoked a big joint, down to a couple of shots of Jaeger.
Bro.
Get him out. Get him out.
Let me get a hit, bro.
I can't wait to listen to Joe and Evan at 10 o'clock.
Bro.
Hear what they have to say. I think Mike McCagnon has been just destroying it here for the Jets. I got the money to spend, $83 million. So we'll take a little break from the Odell Beckham Jr. trade. We've had both Bob Papa, the voice of the Giants, and Paul Schwartz, who covers the Giants for the Post. Today we'll talk Jets. This guy's been on with us many times. He's terrific. Manish Mehta covers the Jets for the New York Daily News and has been a guest of mine for many, many years. Knows his Jet football. Manish, welcome back. How are you, pal?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
What's up, bro?
Well, great. Big day for Jet fans. Just after midnight last night. As if the day wasn't crazy enough before that, they announced they signed C.J. Mosley 6 a.m. yesterday. They get Bell. Now, look, he gets the third most money guaranteed ever for a running back in history, right? Behind AP and Gurley, I guess. $35 million a year. But the truth is, he didn't break the bank with the Jets. And sitting out last season, he probably takes a loss over the next 4 or 5 years. $52.5 million, can make as much as 61, gets $35 million guaranteed. So looks like that was the best offer Bell could get. I think the Jets win big on this one.
Yeah, I agree, without a doubt. Sid. Look, I think when you look at what he anticipated the market would be versus what the actual market would be, the only reasonable conclusion is that the Jets really hit a home run here. Now, look, they're paying him a lot of money. You cited, the initial numbers that came out, $35 million in guarantees. Let's see exactly how that's broken down. We'll have a better sense of that later today when you look at the structure of the contract. Oftentimes when a deal comes out, you get the general sense of what the deal is, but I want to find out how much money he's getting in cash in his first 2 years because he's a 27-year-old player. Let's see if he sticks around beyond 2 years, but you would certainly think that he would be here for 2019 and 2020. So I want to see what the real cash number is and compare that with Todd Gurley from a year ago and David Johnson from about a year and a half ago. So, just on this $13.125 million a year, that's much lower, I think, than what he certainly believed he would get. So
he thought he'd get $15 million. His agent actually told Adam Schefter. Schefter reported today that his agent was still ready for this, quote unquote, trying to drum up interest even yesterday. This is a guy that has like more yards from scrimmage in his first 5 years than any back in history, and his agent was, quote unquote, trying to drum up interest. Wow.
Well, look, there are a lot of factors surrounding Le'Veon Bell. It's not just the player on the field, because from a pure football perspective, I've always believed that he's the best player at his position. And now, look, clearly Todd Gurley, before he got injured down the stretch, is a dynamic player. You're seeing in New York, Saquon Barkley could overtake the reins of being the best all-around back in the NFL. But clearly Le'Veon Bell is a difference maker. But when you speak of Bell, you cannot ignore the fact that, A, he did not play last season, B, he has had 2 suspensions. A third suspension would trigger a fairly large amount of time missed, and he is a different sort of person. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying he's a guy who he believes in what he believes in, and he's not afraid, as he showed last year, to sit out a season in the prime of his career, which is highly unusual. So, there are a lot of factors. In addition to the fact that he's got over 1,600 touches on his body, it's a lot of wear and tear on a running back. They have a relatively short shelf life. So, again, I think it's a great signing for the Jets. I think he's going to be dynamic for them if he can stay healthy over the next 2-3 year window when they're not paying Sam Darnold. But you cannot ignore that there are some risks there.
That is true, and which I was going to allude to, Manish Mehta, and a sports writer who shall remain nameless right now. He talks about Le'Veon Bell's selfishness, his egomania. Again, you alluded to the multiple suspensions for violating substance abuse. And also, he's putting a lot of time into his rap career. So, also, the Steelers players were not happy with him sitting out, and they expressed that vocally, publicly. So, he might not be the best guy in the locker room. Let's put it that way.
Well, look, I'm going to disagree with that one. I think he's actually a very good teammate. Now, you can understand people in the Pittsburgh locker room being a little bit ticked off because they entered this season relying on Le'Veon Bell because they know how much of a dynamic player he is. But I did talk...
The quarterback was pissed at both Bell and Antonio Brown.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think that, and again, I don't want to absolve Le'Veon Bell from any blame, but I think that could be partly a Ben Roethlisberger issue as well. Both sides are probably culpable if you're being honest.
You know what it comes down to, Manish? Like Bernie just read that. If the media is reporting this guy could be bad in the locker room, trust me, 9 times out of 10, he's great in the locker room. Like Odell Beckham Jr., the players, they don't like him. They love him. Love him. Bell, for the most part, was loved in Pittsburgh. So once the media starts to report this guy could be bad in the locker room, you can almost take it to the bank that that's the complete opposite of what the case really is. Right?
Well, I'll say this. In December, I spoke to Steve McClendon, who's a free agent defensive lineman but for the Jets, and their starting left tackle, Kelvin Beachum, who was also a former teammate of Le'Veon Bell. So these are two guys who have been teammates with Le'Veon Bell, I believe, for the first 3 seasons of Bell's career in Pittsburgh. Both of those guys had nothing but terrific things to say about Le'Veon Bell as a teammate. It's funny because McClendon, I believe, described Bell to me as the Jamal Adams of the offense, just in terms of galvanizing players in that room. So I firmly believe he's a good teammate. We'll see. I don't believe that the guys that I spoke to had any reason to lie. I don't think they had any kind of motivation. This was in November. We spoke publicly. We also spoke privately. But even the private conversations, it was very similar. Like, this guy is a guy that you want from a football perspective in your room.
Manish Mehta covers the Jets for the New York Daily News. He does a terrific job. So the Jets look like they were signing Anthony Barr, 4-time Pro Bowler, Minnesota Vikings, good edge rusher, perfect for a Greg Williams defense. Then we get news yesterday they signed even a bigger and better player in C.J. Mosley. And next thing you know, Anthony Barr says to New York, no thanks, and he signs a deal for less money to stay in Minnesota with the Vikings. Was it the Mosley signing? What was it that made Anthony Barr change his mind yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, that was an interesting one because obviously nothing is official, as you know, until you put your name on the dotted line, and you can't technically put your name on the dotted line until free agency begins, which is not until 4 o'clock today. So these are verbal agreements, handshake, if you will, agreements, so guys can change their mind. Barr was interesting because this is a player, from the West Coast. He's a West Coast guy, really kind of ingratiated himself with the Minnesota area and the organization. He loved his coaches. Everything I was told was that by Monday night, actually, after he agreed to the Jet deal, by Monday night, the Vikings actually upped their offer. It wasn't as much ultimately as what the Jets were offering, but they did up their offer. The Jets were made aware of that late Monday night, so they knew they wanted to get C.J. Mosley or make a play for C.J. Mosley regardless, but I think they went kind of into overdrive when they suspected there was a possibility that Barr might change his mind late Monday night. So that's why you saw Mosley get this unbelievable historic contract, $17 million a year. Again, we'll get the details a little bit later, but on the surface, it's a deal that's much better than Luke Kuechly, and Luke Kuechly is the highest paid inside linebacker in the NFL. They're two different types of players. It would have been interesting to see how Greg Williams would have deployed Anthony Barr, because you mentioned edge rusher. He was an edge rusher at UCLA. He was an inside line, off-the-ball linebacker in Minnesota's 4-3 defense. Now, Greg Williams uses a 3-4 and a 4-3. He does a lot of multiple things, but I know that the Jets planned on playing him a little bit more on the edge, but they were also going to play him in a number of different spots, kind of a Swiss Army knife in their scheme. Right. So I thought that would have been a terrific pairing, having Barr there with Mosley. But, Mosley, who was really the heart of that Baltimore defense, isn't a bad consolation prize.
Interestingly, Manish Mehta, the Jets do play the Browns this year, but on the way out, bottom line it for us, if not this year, are the Jets Super Bowl contenders? Come on.
I don't know if they're Super Bowl contenders in 2018.
Come on.
I want to see how Sam Darnold develops, because ultimately we can talk about all these additional pieces that they're bringing in, and they're all very important pieces, but they're only going to go as far ultimately as depending on how well Sam Darnold develops as a player. If he becomes the player that the Jets think he can be, then I think ultimately they can be legitimate playoff contenders and perhaps Super Bowl contenders.
Listen, they added the big offensive lineman. They will, at least from the Raiders. Osemele, they had Jamison Crowder at wide receiver, one of the most dynamic running backs in football. So certainly the GM, Mike McCagnon, is giving Darnold some weapons so he can become the exact guy that you're talking about. I think he is that guy. Anyway, as always, Manish, terrific job. Your writing is great. You know your stuff. Thank you for hopping on this morning, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You got it. Manish Mehta covers the Jets for the New York Daily News. More of Bernie and Sid right after this.
Bernie and Sid in the morning.